Dang, so maybe I should just go on a podcast hiatus a little more often. I go and get married, and the Orioles win 6 out of 7 and get this thing right back on track. I'll recap the O's series win over the Red Sox this week, coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Thursday, May 30th, 2024, and welcome back. And I do say welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, Connor Newcomb, and thank you so much for bearing with me as I took off a few days. I guess it ended up being 3 days of the podcast in total as I went and got married. Thank you everyone who sent the well wishes for what was an amazing wedding over the weekend. And now my first podcast as a married man. And we're going to get into an Orioles series win on this show, breaking down all 3 games from this week's series against the Red Sox, in which the O's took 2 out of 3 from Boston. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Supply House. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. So I've been gone for a little while here, 3 episodes off. Just wanted to kind of give you the plan of what the show will look like now that I am back. We will not really go super deep into the White Sox series. I recapped game 1 back on Friday's episode. You can listen to that. It is great that the Orioles actually mopped the White Sox in a 4-game series. We won't be getting to the 5 things you need to know from those 3 games. But what we will get on this episode is the 5 things you need to know from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, all 3 games against the Red Sox. And then on tomorrow's pod, because the Orioles do have an off day here on Thursday, I'll basically get to all the news that I missed while I was gone. We will talk Dean Kramer. We will talk Thiago Vieira. We will talk some more minor moves. I will get into all of that on tomorrow's episode. But today we're focusing Orioles Red Sox. O's take 2 out of 3 from Boston, have now won 6 out of 7 games after being swept by the Cardinals and ending that sweepless streak. And the Orioles sitting currently at 35-19 on the season. As I speak, they are 1 game back of the Yankees. The Yankees are currently underway in their Wednesday night game against the Angels in Anaheim. So depending on the result of that one, either a game and a half or a half game out of first place. And let's start with the game fresh on my mind as I record here on Wednesday night, the Wednesday series finale, the rubber match between the Orioles and the Red Sox, as the O's win it 6-1 to get the series victory. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles win on Wednesday. And the first thing you need to know is Corbin Burnes was a dog out there for the Orioles on Wednesday. I wouldn't call it his best start in an Oriole uniform because, quite frankly, he walked 3 and only struck out 5. But otherwise, Burnes pretty dominant against this Boston lineup on Wednesday night. 7 innings of 1-run ball, and that only run was unearned. We'll get to it in a moment. He allowed only 3 hits, struck out 5, walked 3, threw 108 pitches, which was the most he's thrown in an Oriole uniform. And despite tossing 7 innings, he allowed just 3 hard hit balls against Red Sox hitters. He didn't get an insane amount of swing and miss. He didn't get an insane amount of strikeouts. It wasn't like the most dominant Corbin Burnes. 16 whiffs is still a good number to have, 31% whiff rate, but it wasn't crazy dominance Burnes. But what it was soft contact, a lot of good cutters, a lot of good curveballs. He had a really good feel for his curveball on Wednesday. I thought the changeup looked good at times to lefties, got 4 whiffs there. Even the slider, which he only threw 8 times, it was his least used pitch out of his 5. His final pitch of the day, though, was his nastiest slider of the night, with 2 on and 2 out, getting a strikeout, getting Ceddanne Rafaela to chase one out of the zone to get out of that jam and finish 7 innings. That tells you, even though it was a number 5 pitch, he's not afraid to go to any offering in a key count. And that's really what he showed me. Good command of all 5 pitches for Burnes on Wednesday night. Just kind of the exact reason the Orioles went and paid a pretty penny, right? DL Hall, they really like. Joey Ortiz has been fantastic in a Brewers uniform this year, but they paid that price to go and get Corbin Burnes for nights like this. He's now got a 2.35 ERA in an Oriole uniform, and that trade just continues to pay off as we get to watch Corbin Burnes pitch for the Orioles every fifth day. I did think, to be honest, the way they've used him, that he was coming out after the one-out walk to Vaughn Grissom. He came back out there at 88 pitches in the seventh inning. Connor Wong got a bunt single off of him on the first pitch of the inning. Then he got Dom Smith to ground out back to the pitcher. Wong advanced to second. And then he was facing Grissom, who's hitting like 140 on the year. And he ended up walking Grissom on 5 pitches, which pushed him 98 pitches, I think. And I just thought, that's it. You got the lefty David Hamilton coming up. You've got the lefty Danny Coulombe pretty much ready in the bullpen. It's time to pull him. Brandon Hyde did not. He got Hamilton to fly out to left. He struck out Rafaela, and he got himself out of the seventh inning. And I personally think Burnes is the only pitcher in this rotation that Hyde is leaving in that spot. And Burnes made it become a good decision. Second thing you need to know from the Wednesday winner of the Red Sox is that Gunnar Henderson provided the big blow for the Orioles in this game, coming up with the bases loaded and 2 outs in the second inning, as the game was already tied at 1 at that point, facing Red Sox right-handed starter Cutter Crawford. And Crawford just hung a cutter. It's funny that Cutter Crawford throws mostly cutters, but how could he throw any other pitch? He hung one at the top of the zone on 1-0 to Henderson, and Gunnar did not miss it, destroying the ball out to right center field for a grand slam. His 18th home run of the season, which once again ties him atop the league leaderboard with Kyle Tucker, 109.2 miles per hour off the bat, 422 feet. And it was nice redemption for Gunnar Henderson, who was part of the Orioles leaving the bases loaded with no outs in a key spot on Tuesday night. We'll get to it in a bit, but the O's had bases loaded, no outs, down 4-3, and didn't even bring 1 run home. And it was Henderson who struck out with the bases loaded and 2 outs in that inning on Tuesday to stop any damage chance for the O's. He comes up in the same spot on Wednesday, does not make the same mistakes, blasts a grand slam. It is just so fun. I say it every time, but it is so fun to watch this guy play baseball every single night. Third thing you need to know from the Wednesday win, without a doubt, it was the game of the year for Ramon Urias. Now, Urias was only in the Orioles lineup because Jordan Westburg was hit by a pitch on his wrist by a fastball on Tuesday night. Now, he did stay in the game on Tuesday, and the x-rays he got Wednesday were negative, which is all good stuff. But Brandon Hyde deciding to give Westburg the day off Wednesday, I'm sure it was sore. It's good that the Orioles have the built-in day off Thursday, so hopefully Westburg will be back in the lineup on Friday night. But really, the only other option with Westburg out is to put Ramon Urias in the starting lineup. So he plays third base, he bats 8th, and what does he do? Well, you're expecting just good defense at third and not expecting much offensively. Well, he reaches base all 3 times in this game. His first time up, an RBI single in the second inning off of Crawford to tie the game at 1, got a high fastball and just poked it back up the middle for a base hit, 97 miles per hour off the bat for Ramon Urias. Then he gets hit by a pitch later in the game. And then finally, to cap it all off, facing Chase Anderson in the 7th inning, Urias with a solo home run off a hanging changeup, hit it into the bullpen, 103 off the bat, 410 feet for just his second home run of the year. Urias has struggled with the bat this year, and he's seen guys like Westburg and Mateo and Henderson obviously surpass him in playing time. So Urias has just been basically put into a bench role. At best, he's starting once a week for the O's at this point and coming in as a pinch hitter or for defense a couple times here or there when needed. He's basically sitting on the end of the bench and barely playing. And for him to be plugged into this spot, have 2 hard hit balls, and reach all 3 times is pretty impressive. And of course, play a good third base defensively in the game as well. Just really, really impressive what I saw from Ramon Urias in this game. Again, he hasn't been good this year. This is just his second 2-hit game. Also had 2 hits back on May 5th in Cincinnati against the Reds, but he hasn't hit the ball hard. He hasn't taken advantage of his chances. This was by far the best Urias game, and just what a job from him to come in and do just that. Fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles win on Wednesday is that really the only negative out of this game, out of this 6-1 win, was the defensive effort in the second inning. That was when the Red Sox got their only run off of Corbin Burnes. It ended up being unearned because the defense kind of fell apart. He got a ground out to start the inning, and then there was a single and a Colton Cowser throwing error that allowed the runner to get to second. Then a pickoff error let him get to third. Then a ground ball to the drawn-in infield. Jorge Mateo made a diving stop, got up, had a chance to throw him out of the plate, but threw it high. The run scores. The runner gets to first. Then he gets to second on a wild pitch. Then Burnes gets a pop out, and then Burnes turns around and picks off the runner between second and third to end a crazy inning. It was kind of sloppy baseball from both sides, but specifically by the Orioles in that second inning. They've played mostly pretty clean baseball this year. That was kind of not like them. That allowed the only Red Sox run to score. I mean, if they play a cleaner game, they shut Boston out on Wednesday night. That was really the one snafu in this game on Wednesday. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 6-1 win over the Red Sox Wednesday that clinched another series win in the AL East, make it 18 consecutive series for the Orioles against the AL East in which they have not lost the series. That is a franchise record. Is that the bullpen made it pretty quick and easy after Corbin Burnes. Danny Coulombe came in, did allow a 2-out single, but got a 0 up in the 8th inning. That was after Coulombe had taken his last outing pretty rough. Came in after Kyle Bradish had thrown 7 no-hit innings against the White Sox on Sunday. Came in, faced the pinch hitter Danny Mendick, and gave up a leadoff solo homer in the 8th inning to break up the shutout, to break up the no-hitter. He took it pretty hard, but came back out there, and the stuff was great once again on Wednesday. And then Dylan Tate, who he did give up 2 out singles, but ended up getting out of it with a grounder, put up a 0 in the 9th to secure the win. Tate just continuing to look really, really good since the Orioles brought him back to the active roster on Friday. Gave him 2 1/3 scoreless on Saturday, gave him a scoreless inning to finish the game on Monday. And then how about Wednesday? I mean, Dylan Tate throwing as hard as he has all year, fastball averaging 93.9, maxing out at 95.4 miles per hour with that sinker on Wednesday night. Both the highest velocities we've seen from Dylan Tate in all of 2024. That's been the big issue with him this year after missing all of last year with the elbow issue. That's the big reason why he was sent down to AAA for a good chunk of time. He just didn't have his velo back. Well, he's starting to get it back, and that is certainly nice to see for the Orioles. And the series win, certainly nice as well as they get the 6-1 win on Wednesday. But they were only in a position to win the series Wednesday because of what they did in the day game on Memorial Day on Monday, just bludgeoning the Red Sox in that series opener. We'll recap that 11-3 win coming up after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. So shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can even get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. So the Orioles winning at 6-1 on Wednesday helped them to clinch this series after they had taken the opener on Monday by a score of 11-3. And I'll rewind it back to that one to get you the 5 things you need to know from the O's 11-3 win over the Sox back on Memorial Day. And the first thing you need to know is, well, those offensive struggles that the Orioles were having for a bit last week certainly went away when they came home to face Boston. 11 runs on 13 hits for the Orioles in this game. They had 18 hard hit balls in that Monday game. 18 of them. That is incredible. It's honestly unfortunate that they only ended up with 13 hits considering how hard they were hitting the ball all day long. I mean, they just bludgeoned Cooper Criswell, who gave up 7 runs, a career high over 4 innings. O's got him for 1 in the second, 1 in the third, and then exploded for 5 runs in the 4th inning. And then they got to the Red Sox bullpen as well. Boston, who the day before had signed Brad Keller, who had been DFA'd by the White Sox. They brought him in and kind of mop-up duty long relief, and Keller threw a scoreless fifth and a scoreless sixth, and he was feeling good. Oh, yeah, and then the O's drop 4 on him in the 7th to just kind of pull completely away in this game. Went 5 for 14 with runners in scoring position. And listen, the Orioles did it their way. They drew only 2 walks in that game on Monday despite 13 hits, and they attacked early in the count, especially against Keller later in the game in that 4-run 7th. He was just throwing fastballs over the middle, and the Orioles were attacking for base hit after base hit. And listen, they've been walking a little bit more lately, which has been nice to see and is going to help the offense. But at its core, this is the philosophy this year. Attack early, and it certainly worked on Monday. And hey, again, only 2 walks. Maybe you'd like more. But when you're getting 13 hits, you will take that every single day. And also, I've seen a lot of talk about, the Orioles offense, it just relies on the homer. They don't draw walks. They don't get hits. They just rely on the homer. Well, they scored 11 runs without hitting a home run on Monday. I think that shows that they can do it offensively in many different ways. And speaking of that offense, the second thing you need to know from Monday's win is that Kyle Stowers was the star in this game for the Orioles. He's played a little bit more, at least more than Heston Kjerstad, since Stowers has been recalled to the Orioles, and he picked up his first career 4 RBI game in that matchup on Monday. Stowers, starting in right field and batting 7th, goes 3 for 4 with a single, 2 doubles, 3 hard hit balls, and 4 RBIs in the game. It was awesome to see for Stowers, who had a line out in the second inning at 89 miles an hour, then a double in the 4th, 99 off the bat, a double in the 6th, 104 off the bat, and his single in the 7th, also 104 off the bat. Just been completely mashing the baseball since he returned. And now it hasn't been like an incredible amount of plate appearances, but since he's come back to the Orioles, 50% hard hit rate, 36% barrel rate, and a 93 mile per hour average exit velocity. Those are elite numbers. And he's still not playing every day. Like, even against a right-handed starter, Stowers was not in the lineup for the Orioles on Wednesday night, but he did start Monday and Tuesday. Had a single on Tuesday as well. And you're asking, well, he was replacing Heston Kjerstad. Why is he playing more than Kjerstad was? Now, again, still, Stowers is still not an everyday player. It's not like he took on that role. But you have a little bit of, okay, you have Mullins struggling more. You have Santander, who's been banged up with that knee issue. But the big thing is Stowers, is a much better defender out there than Santander. So you feel okay with Stowers in left field at Camden Yards. I should say a better defender than Heston Kjerstad, what I meant to say. And if you need him in a pinch, you can play Stowers in center field. That just gives him a leg up on Kjerstad. And also, this is kind of the unfortunate part, and it's not that much a fault of Kjerstad. It's just like Stowers got the early chances, and Kjerstad, right when he was called up, he started a game there pretty early. Like, he got some early chances. Kjerstad just didn't hit. And it's very unfair to say, Heston Kjerstad in the 3-4 games he started in that stint up here, like, he didn't hit enough. That's not big enough of a sample size. But the thing is, Stowers took that spot and immediately hit. And it's very similar to what Colton Cowser did early this season. If you remember, for the first week and change of the year, Cowser was just a part-time player. Like, he wasn't starting a lot, but then he was hitting in those part-time roles, and Austin Hayes was struggling. And the O's were like, well, we got to play him because he's hitting, and he continued to hit. And the same thing, it could happen with Stowers, right? You've got Santander, Hayes, and Mullins all struggling. Santander with a little bit of the knee issue. So you're like, well, Stowers hit the first couple times we put him in there, might as well start him. And then he continues to hit. I don't think Stowers will go on a run like Cowser did in April, but he's doing what Kjerstad didn't do and what Kjerstad can't do in terms of his defense. And that's why he's playing a little more. He's not going to be an everyday player. And I'm sure that Mullins and Santander and maybe Hayes will kind of round back into form here, and Cowser as well, who struggled for a bit. But it's unfortunate, but he's taken better hold of the small chances that he has gotten. And really, really good for Kyle Stowers, who I kind of thought after what happened last year that, he would be at best like a quick call-up guy in the major leagues and would never have a role. He's trying to carve out a role for himself this year. Third thing you need to know from the big win on Monday for the O's is that game had to feel really, really good for Cedric Mullins. Now, we only had 1 hit in a 1 for 4, but it was a big 2-run triple in that 4th inning against Cutter Crawford. And he did have 3 hard hit balls. So after striking out in the 2nd, he hit that triple in the 4th, 99 off the bat out to left center field, which brought in 2 runs. He had a 104 mile per hour line out in the 6th and a 98 mile per hour off the bat ground out in the 7th. That is the first game of the season for Cedric Mullins since April 26th against Oakland, more than a month away First time he had 3 hard hit balls in a game in over a month. That is concerning for Mullins. And also, every single thing he hit was either to center field or to left field. He started using the field a little bit more. This year, he's going the opposite way only 21% of the time. He was at 25% in the great 2021 season and the good 2022 season. Mullins needs to continue to use the field and, of course, hit the ball a little harder, which he certainly did on Monday. Again, he's never going to be the 30-30 player we saw 3 years ago, but he is much better than what he's showing right now. And Monday was just a tiny little glimpse of that for the Orioles. Fourth thing you need to know from their Memorial Day win over the Red Sox is that Cole Irvin returned to the Orioles rotation and just did not miss a beat. Irvin was in the bullpen for a couple of weeks there for the O's as they got a little bit healthier in their rotation. Grayson Rodriguez came back. John Means was pitching well. You had all these options there. So Irvin went to the bullpen for a bit. And the Orioles were saying, hey, we're strongly considering going to a 6-man rotation at some point here in June because we don't have a lot of off days. And Irvin was going to be that 6th guy at some point. But then more injuries cropped up. As I talked about last week, John Means going on the injured list with another kind of elbow and forearm issue. And then you have Dean Kramer, who's now on the IL as well with a bit of a triceps issue. We'll get to that in more depth on tomorrow's episode. But not only do you have to return Cole Irvin to the rotation, but Albert Suarez had to come back into the rotation as well. And Irvin, who, wasn't fully all the way built up again, it just didn't even matter. He came back into the rotation, did exactly what he's been doing all year for the Orioles. 5 scoreless innings for Irvin, 4 hits, 6 Ks, 3 walks, only 4 hard hit balls in 92 pitches, a 2.84 ERA for him overall on the year. But if you take out his 2 relief appearances, in 8 starts this year, he's got a 2.58 ERA with a 2.29 batting average against Cole Irvin as a starter this season. Has just been fantastic after what was kind of a rough 2023 in his first year with the Orioles. He has certainly settled in and been amazing for this team's pitching depth and just their starting rotation as a whole. And he rose in the biggest moment of the game. It was a 2-0 lead for the Orioles, top of the 4th. Irvin loaded the bases with 1 out, and he struck out back-to-back batters, got Dom Smith and then Cedon Rafaela both to strike out to end the inning, strand the bases loaded. And that kind of shifted the momentum in the favor of the Orioles because they came out there and immediately dropped a 5 spot in the bottom of the 4th against Cooper Criswell to break the game wide open. And that was huge. And then Irvin, after that, comes back out and gets the shutdown 0 in the 5th to end his day. And that kind of ended his day because he wasn't fully built up yet. And it did take him 92 pitches to get through 5 innings. But that was plenty for the Orioles to get out of Cole Irvin. He, through his usual kitchen sink approach from Irvin, he's throwing 6 different pitches. He's tossing them all in there at different times. It's not a lot of swing and miss. It was a solid strikeout number. 6 Ks in 5 innings is pretty good, but he's mixing speeds, he's mixing spots, he's mixing movement. He will frustrate other teams when he's this good, and he showed it on Monday. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 11-3 win on Memorial Day against the Red Sox to open up this series is that the bullpen, in parentheses, mostly did a great job after Irvin was done. Nice work by Jacob Webb, who came out in the 6th and gave the Orioles some length. They kind of had a somewhat unavailable bullpen at that point. It did look like Coulombe, Cano, and Kimbrel were all unavailable on Monday. They got 2 scoreless innings from Jacob Webb, which was great in the 6th and the 7th after kind of a rough patch last week. Cionel Perez had to come in and clean up a mess, did a good job of that in the 8th. And then Dylan Tate put up that scoreless 9th after the great weekend that we talked about a little bit. But the one reason I said the bullpen mostly did a good job is because the mess that Perez had to clean up in the 8th inning was left by Thiago Vieira, who is a 31-year-old right-hander who the Orioles had acquired via trade on Saturday from the Milwaukee Brewers after he had been DFA'd by the Brew Crew. We'll get much deeper into Vieira and what he can bring to the Orioles coming up on tomorrow's episode, but it was kind of the perfect spot for Vieira to come in, right? The Orioles were up 11-0 in the 8th inning, and he's a guy who has some command issues, but you're like, it's 11-0 in the 8th. This is a fantastic spot for your Oriole debut. There's 0 pressure whatsoever. Well, it didn't go well. He went walk, 3-run triple, walk, and came out of the game. It was really tough to watch. Luckily, Perez came in, escaped the jam, kept it at just 11-3. And listen, it is hard to have actually a worse debut with a team than Vieira did. So glass half full, only up from there for Thiago Vieira. course, the Orioles, he doesn't have a lot of wiggle room. He's out of options. The O's did give up at least a minor league player in Garrett Stallings to get him, so they want to keep him around. He will get better. You'll see why he'll get better. I'll talk about it more on tomorrow's show, but kind of a tough debut for Vieira. But again, it was the one bad thing that happened to the Orioles in that win. Otherwise, they won it 11-3 to open this series. But of course, they did not get the sweep. They did drop the middle game of this 3-game set. That was on Tuesday night in an 8-3 affair. And I will recap that one to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. It is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And for me, I'm looking at the hockey, Game 5, 2-2 series, Panthers and Rangers. Give me the Florida Panthers money line to take the series lead. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So the Orioles bookended this series against the Red Sox with victories on Monday and Wednesday to win it and get 35-19 on the season. But of course, they did lose one game, and that was an 8-3 defeat at the hands of Boston on Tuesday night. To finish things out, I'm going to quickly get you the 5 things you need to know from that loss on Tuesday. And the first thing you need to know is the offense exploded early, like they were going to do it again in the first inning. After the 11 runs on 13 hits on Monday, the Orioles put up 3 runs in the bottom of the first against Brian Bayo. Grayson Rodriguez had just given up 2 in the top of the first, and the Orioles were like, we don't care. We'll get the lead right back. Gunnar started it off with a double, then an Adley walk. O'Hearn grounds into a force out. Then Colton Cowser with an RBI infield single. Santander is hit by a pitch. Westberg then has the big blow with a 2-run single down the right field line to put the Orioles up 3-2. And it was just really patient at bats against Brian Bayo, a really talented young right-handed pitcher for the Red Sox. And the Orioles just waited him out, made him throw like right up, I think, to 30 pitches in that first inning. Got 3 runs, looked really, really good and really, really comfortable at the plate in that first inning. But the second thing you need to know is from that game is that Brian Bayo then settled in, and the Orioles ended up with only one more chance in this game, and they squandered it. Bayo, after the 3 runs given up in the first, came back out there and just cruised for 4 innings. Second, third, fourth, and fifth. I think the O's only had like 1 or 2 base runners in that span. He was really, really good. That changeup, which is his best pitch, a pitch that's been compared to Pedro Martinez's changeup, was just filthy after that first inning, and he mowed down the Orioles' order. But then they got to him a little bit in the 6th. The pitch count was up. Santander singled. Westberg got hit on the wrist by that pitch that we mentioned earlier. And the O's, who at that point were trailing 4-3, had runners on first and second with no outs, and Alex Cora came out to go to his bullpen. So it was like success. Bayo had been rolling after the early stumble. We got him out of the game. The lefty Brennan Bernardino came in because there was a lot of lefties due up in the Oriole order, starting with Kyle Stowers. Brandon Hyde smartly goes to right-handed hitter Ryan Mountcastle, who was on the bench, who crushes lefties. And Bernardino walks him on a 3-2 pitch. So the O's had the bases loaded and no outs, down 4-3 in the bottom of the 6th. Now, obviously, in that spot, you're looking for the big inning. But at most, you're like, okay, at the very least, we'll get one of these runs home, kind of tie it up heading to the 7th, make it a brand new ball game. And then they just didn't. Austin Hayes pinch hitting for Cedric Mullins. Again, right move against the lefty. He strikes out. Jorge Mateo, who crushes lefties, grounds one back to the pitcher. They get the force out at home for the second out. And then Gunnar Henderson, who's been much better against lefties this year, strikes out on 3 pitches to leave the bases loaded. Bernardino was absolutely filthy. Also worked through a scoreless 7th to keep the Red Sox up 4-3 at the time. He was just nasty. Of course, it was a squandered chance for the Orioles, and that was really their only 3 in the first. They load the bases in the 6th and don't get any. And that was it. Otherwise, pretty quiet offense. And Bernardino was great. I mean, you kind of look back to that inning and you're like, even if Austin Hayes grounds into one of his patented double plays as a pinch hitter, the infield was back. You still score the run. At the very least, you make it 4-4 and you kind of change the complexion of the game. Unfortunately, didn't do it. And just kind of a squandered chance. They happen throughout the year. And that seemed to be kind of the big turning moment in the game. Third thing you need to know from that one is that Grayson Rodriguez, who started for the Orioles, actually had a pretty similar outing to what Brian Bayo did. Rodriguez, quite frankly, was throwing BP in those first 2 innings. Gave up 2 in the first, a home run to Wilyer Abreu, and then an RBI single. Then he gave up 2 more in the second after the O's had gotten him the lead back. Red Sox took it right back at 4-3. 4 runs, 7 hard hit balls against Grayson in those first 2 innings of work. And then he came out there in the third in a 4-3 game and just shut everything down. He was a completely different pitcher from the third inning on Tuesday night. 4 consecutive scoreless innings. He made it through 6 innings with only those 4 runs allowed. He did not allow another hard hit ball after the second inning, was just cruising after that. And posted a career high 10 strikeouts in the game on Tuesday. Grayson's final line, 6 innings, 4 runs, 7 hits, 10 Ks, a walk, a hit batter, a home run, and 90 pitches. Again, those 7 hard hit balls, his ERA at 3.53 on the season for the Orioles. Had 12 whiffs on his 4-seam fastball. The velocity was good. The location was good. 18 whiffs total was really good overall, but he had like perfect pinpoint command trying to throw that fastball up in the zone throughout his start on Tuesday. Was really impressed by that. Got a lot of chases, a lot of swings and misses on that pitch. And, 1 walk and 1 hit batter was nice to see for Rodriguez after, despite his last start being a fairly good one, if you look at the ERA, he walked 5 batters and hit another batter in his last start that he made over the weekend against the White Sox. So this was quite a nice change for Grayson to have much better command of his stuff. It was unfortunate what happened early, but it was nice to see him really, really settle in. Fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles' loss on Tuesday is that Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes might be moving into a little bit of a platoon role right now in the Orioles outfield with each other. Mullins started this game against a right-handed pitcher, went 0 for 2. And then, as I mentioned, Austin Hayes came up as a pinch hitter in the big spot against the lefty with the runners on all 3 bases with nobody out. Unfortunately, Hayes didn't come through. He hit 1 more time later in the game and was out as well. So he had an 0 for 2. But Hayes did stay in the game, moved to left field, and then Colton Cowser shifted from left field over to center defensively. And Mullins, is clearly a better defensive center fielder than Colton Cowser is. He's a better defensive center fielder than a lot of guys in Major League Baseball. But even though the bat's been a little better lately, it's still been an overall struggle for him. And I think the O's are okay not having him out there defensively all the time if the bat will struggle this much. And so maybe against lefties, you'll see more of Cowser in center and Hayes in left, like we saw on Sunday in Chicago. The tough lefty Garrett Crochet was on the mound. Cedric Mullins did not start that game. Austin Hayes did. So you might see that more. And quite frankly, Mullins just been unplayable against lefties this year. And it's not like, Hayes is not like a lefty crusher. Like maybe he's been a little bit better at times against left-handers, but he's mostly an even splits kind of guy. But Mullins is just so terrible against left-handers that Hayes is still a better option. Mullins this year in 47 plate appearances against lefties has just a 133 average with 2 extra base hits and 12 strikeouts to only 1 walk. He's got almost no chance when he is in there against a lefty. So I think a platoon, at least for now, can maybe help out both of these guys. And the O's in general have just been so good hitting against left-handed starters this year that it hasn't been a giant problem, but might be a nice role for both of those guys at this point. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 8-3 loss to the Red Sox in Game 2 of the series on Tuesday night is that the bullpen was just a little bit shaky. Cino Perez came out after Rodriguez worked a clean 7th, but he then did allow a leadoff triple to Rafael Devers in the 8th. Devers, who had another 4-hit game against the Orioles in this one. Yennier Cano came in, allowed a base hit to score the run, but was otherwise solid in the 8th inning. And then came Keegan Aiken. There was a pocket of lefties up. The O's were down 5-3 in the top of the 9th. Aiken's job was, hey, keep it at 5-3. Give us a chance in the bottom of the 9th inning. And unfortunately, he did not do that. He was really bad again. He allowed 3 runs, including a 2-run homer. Game got completely away from him, made it 8-3, and it was over at that point in the top of the 9th. But that was another bad outing for Keegan Aiken, who kind of fell apart in the Saturday game in Chicago against the White Sox as well, when he loaded the bases, then allowed that bases clearing triple to Gavin Sheets. Luckily, the O's had the big 3-homer 8th inning to come back and win that game, but Aiken was in line for the loss, and he has now allowed runs in 3 consecutive outings after he had been great this year prior. Before he has allowed the runs in 3 straight outings, he had had a run of 6 consecutive scoreless outings, and 11 of his last 12 appearances had been scoreless. Then he gives up a run. Then he gives up 3 runs. Then he gives up 3 runs again. He's also got 4 walks in his last 2 appearances. He's only got 10 total walks on the season, and 4 of them have come in his last 2 outings. We are in a little bit of a concerning spot here for Keegan Akin. He is just not pounding the zone with his pitches like we're used to. His fastball is good when he locates it up in the zone. He's throwing it down and in too much to lefties, and he's getting beat by lefties, which is not something we're used to seeing from Akin. Kind of a tough spot for Akin. However, the little bit of the silver lining is there's basically one optionable reliever in the O's bullpen right now. I mean, maybe 2, right? Like Dylan Tate's probably in that category as well. But Keegan Akin has kind of been the guy that's been optionable for most of the year. He's been so good, you never thought of it. But now that he's struggling, and if you do need a fresh arm at some point, remember, I mean, the O's do have the off day here on Thursday, but then they play a lot of days in a row starting on Friday. If you need a fresh arm, Akin with the struggles, it kind of gives you a good reason to send him down to Norfolk for 2 weeks and get another arm up here, but just something to monitor. Brandon Hyde may kind of stay away from him in higher leverage spots for a little bit here. And one of the reasons, not the main reason, but one of the reasons the O's couldn't sweep this series and had to settle, though, still good with 2 out of 3. After mopping the White Sox over the weekend, the Orioles have won 6 out of 7 games and are just playing really, really good baseball again after just kind of a weird spurt in St. Louis against the Cardinals. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much again for bearing with me while I took some time off to go and get married. Thank you so much for supporting the pod. We are up to 7,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you all so much for that. If you are not subscribed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Because we got 7,000 subscribers, we're going to be doing a giveaway here on the pod. We will announce that next week. Make sure you are tuned in to Monday's episode, which will be a recap of the series against the Rays this weekend, but also we will announce the giveaway. I'll be back tomorrow for one more episode this week, maybe get a little bit into a series preview against the Rays. The O's have not played Tampa yet this year, and they've kind of been struggling a little bit, but I will get to all of the news I missed while I was gone. We'll talk about Dean Kramer's injury, what it means for him, what the long-term prognosis could be, what the O's will do in the rotation in the meantime. We'll talk about the trade to acquire Thiago Vieira from the Brewers to put in the bullpen, how he could help the Orioles down the stretch this year. And we'll talk about some minor moves. Caleb Ort, the Orioles have gotten rid of. Ryan McKenna has been DFA'd by the Giants. Tyler Nevin, DFA'd by the A's. Jorge Lopez, DFA'd by the Mets. Could any of those old friends be back? And we'll get to much, much more on the show tomorrow. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.